I'd like to call the Mentor City regular city council meeting of Tuesday, September 19th, 2017 to order. The invocation will be given this evening by Councilman Landing.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand, and guide us in wisdom and a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Julie, please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Here.
Mr. Marr?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling?
Here.
Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here.
Council's in receipt of the minutes of the work session of September 5th, 2017.
Move to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marr?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
And the regular meeting of September 5th, 2017.
Move to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marr?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Okay, public hearings, we have none. New legislation. Ordinance number 17-0-84.
An ordinance to authorize advances of funds and revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filippia.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Malinowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Members of council, this ordinance primarily handles the advance of funds to cover the Marigold Road project and also the appropriations for a subsequent ordinance on the construction of that project. It also has a small $500 increase for a grant, and I recommend approval. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend?
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marr?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marr?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-84 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-85.
An ordinance designating a depository for the active, interim, and inactive funds of the city of Mentor, Ohio, and providing for banking services and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filippia.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Malinowski, please.
Thank you again, Mr. Filipiak. Members of council, every 5 years, by ordinance, we name the current depository banking institutions that the city utilizes, and that's what this ordinance does. The two main changes here are First Merit Bank was acquired by Huntington National, so that bank name has been dropped from the list, and Erie Bank was renamed, or through their acquisition of Lake National Bank, that name change occurred. We have the opportunity to add or delete a bank at any time throughout the course of any given year. But this is to update the 5-year listing. Thank you.
Move to suspend?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marr?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marr?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-85 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-86.
An ordinance amending Part 13, Title 5, Chapter 1349 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Mentor, 2006, as amended, the same relating to building code, additional building regulations, nuisances, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President, members of council. And I know we spent some time at our last meeting going over the changes, and these are relatively minor changes to the code. We've worked with the law department on these, and council reviewed them and added your comments and changes to this section of the code. Primarily, this deals with some changes in definitions as it relates to building regulations regarding nuisances, and particularly tree nuisances. There's a new definition of relating to rank vegetation near unoccupied property, and the degree to which mowing has to occur and with the frequency on those properties, as well as the definition, a little bit broader definition of what dead trees, dead branches is as it relates to our ability to more expeditiously take care of those nuisances on property. Since we did have a great deal of discussion on that at our last meeting, I'm open to any comments or questions you might still have on that.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend?
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-86 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-87.
An ordinance adding Part 13, Title 5, Chapter 1310 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Mentor, 2006, as amended, the same relating to building code, additional building regulations, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. And this, I think most of council members are aware of how we came to recommend this change in the code section. We have had some issues over the years with tree contractors. Contractors that primarily deal with tree services, that is the removal or the maintenance of large trees, really not intended to address small-scale attention to trees that would typically be done by landscapers or those lawn services of that type. But those that represent a real significant size and, in many cases, hazard to the public for the inattention to safety procedures and care for other related properties adjacent to those who would be contracting for those tree services. Mr. Rose and Mr. Zampedro worked together on putting the draft together on this, and again, we reviewed this at our last work session. Perhaps, Mr. Rose, you could start by offering a few comments about, short summary on what's in this ordinance for the public's benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Thank you, Mr. Filipiak, members of council. This ordinance requires tree contractors to register with the city and provide proof of liability insurance. The insurance minimums outlined in the ordinance are $500,000 for bodily injury and $250,000 for property damage. In addition, the city shall be listed on the insurance certificate as a certificate holder, which requires the insurance company to notify the city should there be a lapse in the insurance coverage during the registration period. Other requirements include keeping the work site safe by following some prescribed safety procedures, and also registration with the tax division of the finance department. Registration fees for the tree contractors are the same as the other contractors who must register with the city. One thing it may require a slight amend is we're requesting that the ordinance take effect on January 1st of 2018 to allow with the New Year's contractor registration, and that will allow any tree service out there the opportunity to get their insurance requirements in line for the new year. Thank you.
And I would add, council, again, and on balance, this isn't a particularly pervasive provision. It's really just registering contractors that deal with some pretty large jobs in many cases, but I think more than anything, this just really serves as gives some level of protection to those who are contracting for this service and those who are sometimes impacted, often cases those are neighbors, by the performance of these services. With any type of work in our community, whether it's building related or otherwise, for those trades that we do register, we always encourage our residents to work with a contractor on our registered list. We have that list available on each of the disciplines. We would maintain this list for the public to access. It's been suggested by council that we make that available on our website. I think that's a good suggestion, and we will try to do that. The real benefit here is the ability to hand over information to either a resident that's been harmed as a result of these services being performed, so that they have an insurance provider to look to. And for us to know who's doing business within the community, so that, some better level of oversight can occur.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Blake.
I would like to thank the administration for this, this code language. I had one particular incident this spring that was very difficult for the homeowners to deal with. And with this now, this is a tool that would have brought about a resolution to that problem. So I'm extremely grateful for this. And hopefully we can get everybody to register, and I won't see next year what I saw this past spring. Because we do have a lot of dead trees from the emerald ash borer that are still around and are still being killed off. So this is a problem that brings in a lot of tree services to rectify, and this will be very helpful, and I want to thank everybody who worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, I would just point one other thing out too. It's part of this ordinance makes clear by definition what size of tree that you would be dealing with and other aspects, so that it would be clear, I think quite clear, that if you are, again, marginally involved in tree maintenance, landscapers and that, most of them probably will find themselves falling well outside of the need to register based on the limited amount of work that they do because of the size of the tree that they work with. Mr. Rose had mentioned that our interest would be for this to take effect January 1st. After some discussion with council leadership and the law director this afternoon, I think we agree that I don't think an amendment is necessary. Adopt this tonight. We will not be enforcing this until after January 1. We certainly recognize that a lot of this tree work happens in the fall, very active time for tree trimming and planting. We really wouldn't want to get involved in disrupting that. So this would be a January 1, would be the first effective year that we would take registrations.
No, just a comment. That's actually a very fair position to take, and I'm glad we brought it up, because I see we don't prorate the annual fee.
No.
So January 1st, and plus it encourages people in January 1st to register, because there's going to be no benefit to wait until spring or
Right.
when it's active. So I think that all falls in. I think that's an excellent idea to proceed that way. Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-87 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-88.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of an economic development grant with Monode Marking Products and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President, and very shortly turn this over to Mr. Traub to give you the details of this agreement. But I just wanted to point out, because we do have a representative here from Mono Markings, and which is a family business that's been operating in our community for a number of years, multiple generations, and really it's been a pleasure to work with them over the years. They've been involved not only in reinvesting and relocating within our community, they've also engaged with us as part of our international trade initiative efforts and accompanied us on a trip to Europe in the past. So very happy to be able to work with them once again to help their success along in our city. Mr. Traub.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak, and members of council. To pick up where Mr. Filipiak left off, as you'll note in the second paragraph of my staff report, in 2016, Monode experienced a significant downturn in business due to foreign competition. So the fact that they participated in the trade mission exemplified their willingness to pick themselves up and to work to rebuild their business. I think it is also worth saying that even though there was a significant decline in business resulting in a lower payroll, that they did not lay off any employees as a result of that business downturn. What they are seeking to do at this point is through the purchase of a piece of equipment from out of state, and actually a company that they purchased from out of state, is to move the assets here to the Mentor facility and to develop a new product line that is similar to but not identical to their current product line, to diversify as it were, to continue the growth of the company. As you'll note from the staff report, they are anticipating an increase in sales, which will result in additional employments, and from our standpoint, additional payroll. As Mr. Flipiak noted, there is a representative of Minode in the audience. He did not have an opportunity to pass me the product that I'm so fond of sharing with members of council, to attach a product with a company name. I don't know if Mr. Mackey brought that, but to the extent you'd like to hear from him briefly, that might be welcome at this point. I would note that based on our requirements for a Mentor Economic Development Grant, that the guidelines would dictate a grant in the amount of $8,000. And Mr. Mackey? Thank you. If there are any questions while he makes his way to the podium?
Thank you. So we're a parts marking traceability company. When you manufacture something, we provide the equipment for you to mark your serial number or information on that part. So we make all the machines that put the VIN number in Harley-Davidson bike frames. We identify scissors, medical equipment. Those are water meters, aerospace, government, kind of everything. That world's gotten a lot bigger. Foreign, like you said, you can now just type into Google things we do, and they've become a lot cheaper with foreign competitors. So we found a company that does essentially a different version of embossing dyes for canning lines and the lids of smokeless tobacco, things of that nature that require some of our services. So we want to take that line over and expand so we have a different track as well as our traditional method we've had.
Very good.
Any questions?
Pleasure you guys being a part of Mentor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mackey has a side business too, don't you?
Yeah, I'll be back here with that shortly. I got everything in a row for about a couple weeks ready for that.
He's a craft beer producer and has regularly participated in our On Tap event in the summer.
I think Mentor would be a great place for a brewery. I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Move to suspend. Second.
Please call the roll. Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Move to approve. Second.
Please call the roll. Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-88 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-89.
An ordinance approving a minor subdivision at 7058 Culver Boulevard and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Trout, please.
Thank you. Members of council, again, I'm going to use the overhead projector. In the case of a minor subdivision such as this, I think an aerial photograph will aid in describing what the applicant is proposing to do. Excuse me for just a moment.
Ron, we should either move that closer to you or have you move closer to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a lot of exercise.
Members of council, the applicant has two existing lots on Culver Boulevard. Total area is approximately 2.59 acres. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission. The proposal before them was to split the two lots into four. Because this lot does not meet the minimum lot width requirement, it does need to go before City Council for approval. In taking a look at the existing lots on Culver, they range from approximately 68 feet to about 75 feet, which there too is below the B2 requirements. So the proposed subdivision, again, while the lot width is going to be below the R2 standard, is still above the existing average along that section of Culver. The lots will exceed the overall area requirements, as you can see from aerial photograph for the B2 district, however. If there are any questions.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend. Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Move to approve. Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
ordinance number 17-0-89 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-90.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to award a bid contract to D.E. Williams Electric, Inc. for the Menor Generator Expansion Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Philip.
Thank you, Madam President, members of council. And as council is aware, we did, with the last couple of years, replace the generator that services this municipal building. There was additional capacity incorporated into that to allow for the potential for future expansion to the municipal complex, to potentially include some enlargement of the police department activities. That isn't necessary at this time, so we want to make access, make available the access, the capacity that it does exist to enlarge the portions of this existing building that would have reliable power in the event of a failure. Mr. Vernon?
I would only add that D.E. Williams Electric was involved in the installation of the original generator. Therefore, I recommend that they be awarded this contract.
Move to suspend. Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Move to approve.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
ordinance number 17-0-90 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-91.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to award a bid contract to Cintas Corporation for uniform service and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Philip.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Vernon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Flipiak. Members of council, Cintas Corporation is the current provider for this program that provides daily work uniforms for members of Public Works and Parks Departments. The bid provided by them has a life of 5 years and is identical to the current pricing. With the experience and service provided by Cintas, I recommend that we award this contract to Cintas Corporation.
Move to suspend. Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Move to approve. Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
ordinance number 17-0-91 has been approved. Ordinance, 91, I'm sorry. Ordinance number 17-0-92.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to award a bid contract to JTO Inc. for the Marigold Road Improvements Project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Philip.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'm certain that Councilman Krieger is happy to see this go forward. As council is aware, we've committed ourselves to reconstruction of the majority of the roads to the west of Corduroy Road in the Headlands area, taking the roads that need it the worst first, Marigold and Orchard at the top of that list. Looking at our ability in terms of timing and cost, we are going to try to commit ourselves to moving forward with one street per year going forward. These are, as council is aware, these are expensive projects. Marigold is a total reconstruction. Mr. Swigger will tell you a little bit about the details of it, and it's important to point out that as we try to schedule these out, we are attempting to make access to as many outside funding sources as possible. Recently was able to inform council in a weekly report that we are anticipating receiving $500,000 in grant funding for the next phase at Marigold. And this phase, I'm sorry, for Orchard Road. And this phase includes, at a minimum, a grant of about $224,000. We expect that to go a little bit higher. Mr. Swigger.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Madam President, members of council, the Marigold Road Improvements Project consists of a complete roadway reconstruction using asphalt concrete pavement and concrete curbs. It also includes drive apron replacement, walk and ramp replacement at intersections, sanitary and storm sewer lateral replacement, also including catch basins and manholes. Project limits will extend from Woodridge Road to Lake Overlook Drive. Certain project costs will be shared by the Lake County Department of Utilities and Aqua Ohio in order to avoid duplication of effort and additional inconveniences to residences. Lake County Department of Utilities will cover all costs associated with sanitary sewer lateral replacement, and Aqua will share in the cost of drive apron and lawn restoration. An approximate grant of $224,000 and a loan of $150,000 was secured from the Ohio Public Works Commission for the project.
I want one other thing I'd like to point out to council on this. This is a really good example of our ability to work together with some of our counterparts at Lake County. In this case, the utility department. We've been working together in certain areas that have been very high profile in Ward 3 during storm events, but in this case, they've been very willing to accommodate our schedule and the replacement of the sanitary sewer. That's about $600,000 worth of work that they'll be incurring, and they've also made the similar commitment on Orchard in recognition that this is an area that needs it. So, it's not real often that we can get jurisdictions to work as closely as we have on projects like this, and also have their budgets match up with what our current schedule and need is. So we do appreciate their efforts there.
Madam President. Mr. Filipiak, this is for the administration. Do you anticipate about, 4 or 5 streets would be in this project over time?
Mr. Swigger, do you want to answer that?
Well, I think our goal is to address all the streets west of Corduroy. That is around 10 streets total when counting up all the north-south streets and the east-west streets. So, it's a long-term goal, but we've got a plan to tackle each one year at a time.
So we're looking upwards at $20 million investment in the roads and the headlands possibly then, right? That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's probably a good ballpark at this point. They may not all need the same level of consideration as Marigold and Orchard. Again, we know these are complete rebuilds. I know our engineers working very closely with CT Consultants to try to get creative on the others. We'll just have to see when we get in there. But, it would be nice to be able to stick to the schedule that we're on. But as Dave pointed out, it's a long-term goal. We will get there. No assurance of the schedule on that. And again, I think it's really important for us to be able to take advantage of these outside grant sources. And we've been lucky so far. Between the grants and the loans, these 2 streets alone will be bringing almost $1 million to the table. $6 million just in those 2 streets alone, but it's still a nice little bit to be able to add to the pot. So.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. Just noted the sanitary sewer laterals. That is, I assume, to the right-of-way
Yes.
that the utility department will be
Well,
paying
actually,
for?
Aren't they going to do this?
Could you clarify that? And will that be the same as we move across on the streets in the Headlands area?
Well, again, in the planning discussions, they have committed to, trying to work with us on the entirety of this area. They did some sewer replacement work not long ago up by the on Forest Road, near the school there, if you'll recall. Most of this will be relining, but as they, again, I think they'll evaluate these sections as we get closer and closer. And of course, we're working with Aqua Ohio on these areas as well. So, I mean, this is one of the older sections of housing stock in the community, but they're going to literally have brand-new infrastructure out there.
Well,
So
as a follow-up, then, the lateral section that they're lining or replacing, who will maintain that? The resident in the future?
Yeah, it'll just follow their current policy
Their
on
current
that.
regulations,
Although
okay.
those laterals will be rejuvenated, so
Correct, yeah.
one would expect.
No, that's a win-win,
That's-
thank you.
yeah.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Move to approve. Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes,
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
ordinance number 17-0-92 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-93.
An ordinance approving the final subdivision plat of 4 industrial lots in the Liberty Business Park 2 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President, and Mr. Traub, you want to start us out here, please?
Thank you. The Liberty Business Park development, basically the undeveloped area behind the former Caterpillar plant, has had a long history, and you'll note from the discussion in the zoning history that a preliminary subdivision plat for extension of Justin Way was approved back in December of 1998. So we're looking at almost a 20-year time period. An extension had been granted and had since expired. The curious thing is that again, for a good many of these years, virtually no activity taking place on the grounds, if you will, of the former Caterpillar site. Administration had a conversation with the property owner in February of last year and suggested that given the lack of available industrial property in the city, that perhaps it would be appropriate to re-examine this subdivision. And we've been working for some period of time in terms of bringing those documents forward. And this evening, what you'll be considering is the further subdivision, Phase 2, if you will, of the Liberty Business Park. And as was the case with Culver, I'm going to use the overhead to share with you the proposed subdivision. Just a moment. You'll note the building that is certainly the most impressive building on the landscape of Tyler Boulevard, and a significant amount of acreage, if you haven't been back there, that frankly is available for development. Moving Solutions has been a tenant on the property for well over a decade, and has enjoyed their location back there, but again, a significant opportunity. The lots that have been proposed for this subdivision range in size from a little over 7 acres to slightly over 26 acres. The reason being, as council is well aware, we've seen several companies come before us of late with buildings in excess of 100,000 square feet. So rather than present to you a subdivision plan of equal dimensioned lots along that Justin Way extension, we've provided some flexibility to the developer to work with prospective tenants that may be coming to that property, so that a subdivision can be more customized, as it were. We would note that, of course, the end of the existing concrete cul-de-sac will need to be removed. I would also note that the length of Justin Way, as a result of the full construction of the roadway, will be in excess of 2,600 linear feet. And as a result of that, a waiver by the Municipal Planning Commission was necessary, and in fact was made. Also a requirement for sidewalks along the front of these industrial lots, and that requirement was also weighed as well. A couple of issues on the subdivision. There's an existing a gas well on the property and also wetland area. And again, the plan will be to subdivide and ultimately to seed developments on the property that will avoid those impacted areas. And then my final note would be that as a result of a traffic impact study that was prepared, it would, as the subdivision builds out, there will be a need for reinstallation of the traffic signal at Justin Way and Tyler Boulevard, and that will be the developer's responsibility to incur that cost, if there are any questions.
Thank you. Gentlemen,
Move to suspend?
Second.
Please call the roll. Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move for passage?
Second.
Please call the roll. Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-93 has been approved. Ordinance number 17-0-94.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 17082, the same relating to employment policies and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Take that.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Henning, please.
Okay. When we adopted the changes to the classifications for employees and their compensation at your last meeting, one of the paragraphs missed the additional 0.5% allowance that was being provided to the administration for employees citywide. This corrects that error, and if there's any questions, I will answer them.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend?
Second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move for passage?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-94 has been approved. Resolution number 17-R-122.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. Members of council, this resolution is a necessary step in certifying the tax rates for property taxes in calendar year 2018. And these are identical rates to the current year, 2017, and this generates approximately $5.2 million in revenue to the various funds. I recommend approval. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Move to suspend.
Second?
please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Resolution number 17-R-122 has been adopted. Second readings, we have none. Third readings. Ordinance number 17-0-74 as amended.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a community reinvestment area agreement with BSD LLC and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Madam President, members of council. And at prior to our last meeting, we were able to have very productive, I believe, discussion with members of council about helping us to establish some guidelines by which we would evaluate the CRA, the Old Village Community Reinvestment Area. And I'm happy to say that with council's guidance on that, we were able to all agree on a relatively simple and straightforward approach to Old Village investment based really on the level of that investment. And in both of these agreements that you have before you, ordinance number 74 and 75, we have incorporated those guidelines that we reviewed last week. In both cases, these are investments in the Old Village that will exceed $1 million. They are both then eligible for a CRA tax abatement of 50% for the full 10-year period. And I know that we have had a great deal of discussion in the past about the merits of these and the projects themselves. I'll turn this over to Mr. Traub. May or may not want to mention just a summary of the Brunner-Sandin project, and then offer any answers or responses to council's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Flipiak. Again, just in summary, the total project cost for the building adjacent to the Brunner-Sandin Funeral Home is in excess of $1.4 million, including $1.3 million, which was specifically identified as a construction cost. You may recall at the work session, I had shared with council a list of projects that had been completed in the Old Village area over a time period in excess of 10 years, and there were only, less than a handful of projects where the level of investment was as significant as what you're seeing in the two projects this evening, and those then became the criteria under which the incentive is being offered. In addition to the investment in the building itself, in the case of the Brunner-Sandin Dietrich application, the tenant that they have secured is going to be bringing a significant payroll with them, and in fact is a very robust and growing companies, that being Lighthouse Advisors. And there is also an opportunity for a tenant on the second floor. So again, a significant shot in the arm, as it were, for the Old Village area. I would just note in closing that Mr. Adam Sandin, who is the applicant on the project, is in the audience, to the extent there are members of council have specific questions relative to what he's requesting, or to the extent that I can answer questions. Thank you.
Madam President,
Mr. Frisch.
I would move to amend.
Second?
Please call the roll.
The motion to amend relates to enlarging the percentage of the abatement for 50%, and to extend it for an additional 5 years. Just want to be clear about what the amendment is.
Which is in red.
So move from 25% to 50% in 5 years to 10 years.
Yeah.
The people listening to
Not
this.
bold red, but just red.
I'll
Move to
second
amend.
that.
I think it went 10 years.
10 years.
Right, so we're increasing from 25% to 50%, increasing from 5 years to 10 years,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll second that.
Please call the roll. Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Move to suspend as amended.
Second.
Please call the roll. Mr. Landig.
Just a comment, I'm looking on page 3 with the red, it goes from 2022 to 2028, and that's 6 years. So I just want to point that out.
Here we go.
Or refer that to Community Development Director.
Page 3. Page 3. Okay.
Which is also in red.
Yeah, well, that's what it's supposed to.
10 years. It is in red.
It is 10 years.
That's 10 years.
Yeah, it's 10 years. That's,
Yeah, it's,
it's from
Right.
now till 28.
I understood it was going from 5 to 10 years, so from 2022 to 2028 is 6 years.
Well, no, it's.
No, they crossed off 2020.
2018, it's starting in 2018.
Okay, so
2018 to 2028,
it's 10 years.
okay.
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes, move to approve.
As amended.
What?
As amended.
As amended, sorry.
Second.
Give you your big chance and
As
you blew it.
amended. He was all-
Please call the roll.
Overzealous.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-74 has been approved as amended. Ordinance number 17-0-75 as amended.
An ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a community reinvestment area agreement with MPB Holdings LLC and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Philippiak.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Traub, but I think my last comment on this is that here are two significantly sized projects, and this is exactly why we adopted this community reinvestment area in the old village, and it seems to be having some impact. So again, another creative tool that the community is able to use to see some redevelopment. Mr. Traub?
Thank you. As many members of council, perhaps all members of council are aware, this is the project just to the north of Yours Truly Restaurant. And for those of you that have been on council for some period of time, you may recall the sale of that property to the Shibley family some considerable years ago. And again, no activity on the property. And while we ensured that the grass was cut, certainly was not contributing to the economy or the vitality of the city, or more specifically the Old Village area. Have a proposal before us now for the construction of a 3,600 square foot commercial building, which is the one that you see under construction right now, that will house Great Lakes Eye Care, and will also have some tenant space available in it. Again, a considerable investment on the part of the property owner, and this will again contribute to the vitality of our Old Village area. If there are any questions.
I believe the amendment would include the same red underlined.
That would be an increase from 25% to 50% for the percentage of the abatement, and an increase from 5 years to 10 years for the duration of the abatement, to be specific.
Okay, and in that case, I'll move to amend.
And I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
I'll move to suspend as amended.
Second, as amended.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes, move to approve as amended.
There you go.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Ordinance number 17-0-75 has been approved as amended. Manager's report.
Thank you, members of council. During the month of October, our firefighters will be again participating in Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and will be wearing navy T-shirts with pink logos on to show their support. Contractor C. Crump has started removing sediment from Garfield Park Pond. The pond is being dredged to a depth of 5 feet below the normal water surface level. Sediment from that pond is currently being transported to Springbrook Park, where it will be spread out and eventually tilled into the soil as a complement to that site and as a part of the Springbrook Development Project, Park Project. Dredging and restoration is scheduled to be complete by October 31st, with substantial completion scheduled for November 15th. First Energy is expected to complete their relocation work on Menor Avenue next week for the Menor Avenue widening project. This will allow the other utilities, including AT&T and the cable companies to begin their relocation of their aerial facilities. Those relocations are expected to take up to an additional 8 weeks to complete, so you won't see any additional street work really getting started out there for another couple months yet. There are 2 more weeks. We remind our residents that there are 2 more weeks of the Mentor's Farmer Market left for the season. The market is open at Garfield Park on Fridays from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. The season officially closes on September 29th. Winter rates at Blackbrook Golf Course begin on October 1st and will continue through April 15th of next year. Also, we like to let our folks know that aeration of the greens will begin on October 2nd and 3rd, and the tees and the fairways will be completed shortly thereafter. We have 1 business relocation to announce. EDM Performance Accessories has moved from Clover Avenue to 7576 Tyler Boulevard, and 2 new businesses in town, Express Phone Repair at 7311 Manor Avenue, and the Pita Pit at 7519 Manor Avenue. And we want to thank them for their investment in the community, and we wish them great success. That's all.
Clerk's correspondence.
Council is in receipt of a new liquor permit request for Roush Asba Enterprises LLC DBA Easy Stop Mini Mart.
Council is in receipt of the Commission Committee reports for the meeting minutes of the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals, August 8th, 2017, Tree Commission, August 9th, 2017, and Municipal Planning Commission, August 17th, 2017. Old business. Mr. Donovan.
Hi, Mr. Swigger, I just wondered, are you hearing anything on Hunter's Woods, the property, the EPA inspection and the water situation with the strip of land we were looking to purchase for that storm sewer? Is there anything new on that?
We're currently negotiating with the property owner for the project to basically divert water from I-90 to the stream and direct it eastward. But we thought we had an agreement, but we're not so sure at this point, so we're still working on that. As far as, I haven't heard back from the EPA regarding impacts from the construction at Lakeland Community College on the pond at Hunter's Woods. We don't think that it's a great impact to the pond. If anything minor, we don't expect any impacts to the system, our storm sewer system entering the pond. But at this point, we haven't heard anything concrete back from the EPA.
I'm just passing it on. The residents are wondering, just wondering about any kind of results from that or any kind of results from the purchase of that property with that storm situation we were looking at. And
I can address that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we did have a purchase agreement even finished, and we had a title commitment issued so that we had all our ducks in a row, and then the price that had been negotiated through the engineers department suddenly more than doubled. And so, and we're not quite sure why. And so I think it's probably reasonable to expect that after we conduct a little bit more due diligence and inquire of the property owner as to whether they have an appraisal that would support that increased demand, that we may end up in court, and you may end up seeing a resolution of necessity, starting similar to what we had to pass when we started the lawsuits for the property on Route 20.
Thank you.
I mean, we
understand.
won't be denied.
Right.
We just may have to go to court to get that right.
Thank you.
Any other old business? New business? Okay, we have no persons before council this evening, correct, Julie? No?
Move to adjourn.
Second.